The Return of the Twelves by Pauline Clarke. Chapter 14. Gone. Each morning, Mr. Morley would seize upon the local paper and turn to the correspondence to see if there were any more letters about the soldiers. There was a lull after the first day or two, and then they started again. "Now that's exactly what I think," said their father with satisfaction, reading a letter. "It's what I said, you remember? Everybody likes having his own opinions backed up by It's what I said, you remember? Everybody likes having his own opinions backed up, and Mr. Morley sounded very pleased. "What is?" said Philip. "Read it, Daddy," urged Jane. "Is it a new one about the soldiers?" "Yes, sir," read her father, cracking the paper in his square brown hands. "It is surely infantile to suppose that the cause of serious literary criticism, or even of serious biography, however psychologically slanted, can possibly be furthered by the examination of some wooden toys, of a kind made by 1,000 and played with in their childhood by the Bronte family. What they imagined and wrote about these soldiers is perhaps valuable and certainly revealing. Much of it is published and available. To think the toys themselves would be illuminating is only sentimental. I remain, etc. I hope Seneca D. Brewer reads that," he finished. Mac sat up with a jerk, and his eyes glittered as he looked at Jane. There were a great many hard words in the letter, yet he thought he had the sense of it. The soldiers, being wooden and like many others, could not tell anybody anything. How little these people knew about the venerable Crashy, the Duke of Wellington, dear Stumps, lively Sneaky, bold Cheeky, gloomy Gravy, hard-drinking Bravey, Monkey and the Middies. He looked at his father, smiling. Mr. Morley thought that Max was pleased because the letter meant that the soldiers were in less danger of being pursued and put in a museum. So he winked and said, "That'll settle Seneca, eh, Max?" And then a silence fell upon the table because Mr. Morley was the only one who did not yet know that the professor was proposing to fly the Atlantic and bear down upon them. Mr. Morley saw his family exchange glances. "Go on, Philip," said his mother. "Tell." "What?" said Philip's father, startled. "Seneca's coming," Philip said, enjoying the sensation he was causing. And he took the cablegram from his pocket and pushed it to his father. "Philip, you are a young idiot," Mr. Morley said crossly when he realized what it meant. "Daddy, you suggested writing yourself. Actually, I'd already done it," said Philip, his voice rising high with injury and protest. "But you know you did." "What are we going to do?" said Mr. Morley to his wife. "I don't know," she said resignedly. "Maxie won't part with them. There's no proving they're the ones. The whole thing is ridiculous. But it's not our fault. The man must have money to burn. I've told Philip he ought to put him off." "Philip, you must have given him the impression they're the Bronte soldiers, if he's willing to fly to see them," said Mr. Morley gloomily, turning for consolation to the paper again. "Here's another letter all about the horrors of war, and how boys shouldn't be allowed to play with soldiers. That'll be from one of the Friends." Now Yorkshire has quite its share of those who call themselves Friends, or Quakers, and they disapprove strongly of anything to do with war. They themselves will never be soldiers or fight in any way. They will only help the victims. Should anything which glorifies war, ask this friend, even a set of wooden soldiers who inspired the imagination of the four Brontes, be allowed to be so important as to cause a hue and cry and the offer of a huge reward? "Give your £5,000, he told the professor sternly, to the refugees, the guiltless victims of the last terrible war and those oppressions which followed it." "Well, I must say I can agree with him," said their mother. "There'll be answers to both of those, I expect," Mr. Morley said. It was not only through the paper that the interest in the Bronte soldiers grew. It soon became clear that people in the neighborhood were beginning to know of the Morleys' possible part in the affair. Bill, for instance, Mr. Morley's help on the farm, said with curiosity, "It's a rummin, but what it says in the paper about them soldiers that Bronte bairns had, happens it's your little lad that's found them?" Mr. Morley was taken by surprise and hedged. There can't be any proof whatever that any soldiers found here had anything to do with the Brontes. Bill, how could there be? And he thought to himself, how did Bill know what Maxie told him? But folks is saying that some professors band over here. All to road from America. No, but just to see him, Bill asked in a questioning tone. And Mr. Morley realized then that of course it might have leaked out after the cable, and no wonder it had caused talk. Why should they not be interested? They were reading their paper like everyone else. The baker, coming up to the kitchen door, said cheerfully to Mrs. Morley, "Nay, missus, it caps all. What they say, these here wooden soldiers will fetch by, but I wouldn't mind finding them, my son. I can tell you that." Mrs. Morley could not tell from this whether he knew of Max's find or whether he had only read the paper, so she said that she expected the fuss would all die down soon. But Jane, who had overheard both of these things, and had discreetly said nothing at all, ran up quickly to the attic where Max was. "Angria," she whispered through the keyhole, tapping 3 times. This was their password. They had found out from the book that the name which Branwell and Charlotte Bronte later gave to their imaginary country of the young men was Angria. "Instead of Africa, I suppose," Jane had said, so they decided to use it for a password. Max unbolted the door and Jane slipped inside. "Maxie," she began anxiously, "everyone seems to know about them. Bill's just said to Daddy he hears you may be the lucky finder, and the baker said something about them to Mummy." Max interrupted her. "Who's told Bill, Philip? I asked Mummy that. She says she expects it may be because of the cable arriving. What are they? Where are they all anyway?" she whispered. "They've gone on a climbing trip over Daddy's rucksack. Can you see? Ross used the cord to pull himself up, and now they're all doing it. Look." Jane looked and saw a line of the young men pulling themselves up the steep, grey, wrinkled slopes of the rucksack by the cord which hung from its neck. Ross, Sneaky, and the Duke had reached the top, jumped over the edge, and were peering out as if it were a great crater. The rucksack was full of camping stuff, and there was a ground sheet folded at the top. "They're so ingenious," she said. "Yes, and brave," said Max. "After all, it might be a volcano, for all they probably know. Maxie, what are we going to do when this professor arrives?" Jane said when they had watched the mountaineers a little longer. Gravy had just stumbled over a slippery bulge and was swinging by the rope. A wave of thin, jeering laughter could be heard from the slope, and even the Duke, from the edge of the crater, was smiling. As for Sneaky, he was doubled up with laughter. "Never mind, Gravy, darling," said Jane in a gentle whisper. "The genie love and protect you." And at this, Gravy renewed his foothold and climbed on, his sad face full of determination. "I don't know about the professor. That's what I've been trying to think out. I want Mummy to stop him coming, and the only thing I can think is to let her into the secret. What I'm afraid of is that if we tell a grown-up, they'll say it can't be true and the 12s will freeze forever. I know, that's what I thought. It would have to be a special kind of person who understood. Surely if they saw them alive, they couldn't say it wasn't true, and then they'd help us protect them. Yes, Mummy would know how to put everyone off. Or should we just hide them, Jane? Put them somewhere away from here in their box? Max, they'd hate it!" And together they wondered how they could possibly explain to Butter Crashy and the rest that they must, for the moment, be buried alive again. "Of course they'd freeze then, all right," said Max. "Yes, and they might never come back to life," Jane added. "We could explain it would be no worse than being under the floorboard, and we'd rescue them when it was safe. I wondered if the Howsons would mind if we used their grotto right behind in the little cave. Nobody would look there," Max suggested. "Do we want to tell the Howsons? I say, Maxie, what about Mr. Howson, Mr. Rochester? He'd be interested. He'd believe in them and help us," Jane said suddenly. Max nodded. He had promised to show Mr. Howson the soldiers. Mr. Howson was a Bronte fan and knew all about the young men. "I bet he's been reading the letters in the paper," Max said. At this minute they heard their mother step on the stair and her voice calling, "Maxie, Jane, are you in the attic?" "Yes," they answered, springing up. "Well, Max, there's a reporter ringing up from the paper asking about the soldiers. Open the door, darling. I don't want to have to shout." Why do you keep the door bolted? And Mrs. Morley, not unnaturally impatient, wriggled the handle. I'm coming out, Max said hastily, and did so. This man wants to know whether it's true that one of my sons has found some soldiers like the Bronte ones, and can he come and interview the finder and photograph him with his find? And all those letters, Max scowled. Who told them? Darling, I don't know. What am I to say? He's holding on. But did you tell him it was true? Max demanded. No, I said I wondered how he'd heard that, and that I'd come and ask you. Max looked at his mother gratefully. Well, say no, Mummy, he ordered. You won't give them an interview. Doesn't it sound grand? And what about photographing the soldiers? No, no, Max said in terror. They don't want to be in the paper, nor do I, Mummy. Mrs. Morley thought how different Max was from other boys who might rather like being in the paper, and again she wondered at his fierce and secret attachment to these soldiers. I'm afraid they'll make up a story if we don't give them one, but I'll just say no and ring off, she said. Is Janey there? Yes, thank you, Mummy, Max said. I do think Phil's a beast. It's all his fault about the cable, he blurted. It's all rather nonsense in my view, she said. And she wanted to ask Max, what was it about these soldiers? They don't want to be in the paper, he had said, but she remembered the reporter holding on and hurried downstairs. Jane, Max said, going back into the attic, did you hear? It's getting dangerous. Yes, I did, Jane nodded. And in the afternoon, the reporter did not bother to ring up again. He simply came. Jane and Max stampeded to the attic and bolted the door. They heard their mother repeat again and again that she had nothing to say. Not long after this, Mr. Housen telephoned. Mr. Morley, saying he was so interested to read all this in the paper, and he could not help connecting it with Max's soldiers, and could he possibly come and see them tomorrow? Mr. Morley naturally said yes. Jane and Max, on the way to bed, decided that they would let Mr. Housen see the 12s, and that if the time seemed right, they would warn Butter Crashy and present the noble patriarch, lively and wise, to the parson and ask for his advice as an elder genie. When they had decided this, they felt happier. Max said they could always, after all, tell their mother too, for she had been marvelous with the reporter. The next morning, when they went up to get the young men ready in ranks for inspection, not a soldier was in sight. Oh, they've mountaineered somewhere, Max said, beginning to search. Yes, I expect so, Jane answered, joining in. They searched high, they searched low, under, inside, back of beyond. They searched more and more quickly and loudly, bumping into each other with fear growing inside them. Jane, in the rucksack. No, Max, in that roll of carpet. No, in their box. No, Max, under the old floorboard. Max dived for the squeaky board, scrabbled frantically at it, lifted it up, empty, put his hands right in as far as they would go, dirt and cobwebs. No! Max was almost crying, and Jane was pale. They've gone, she said at last, clutching her hands over her chest. Lost. Not lost in the attic. They had searched, and the door had been safely shut at night. Stolen? The window was open. They often had it open. They seldom bothered to shut it in dry weather. It was wide open this morning. Or strayed. Who could tell? Max flopped over the Ashanti stool. We haven't protected them, he sobbed. We've let them be taken. What will happen to them? And that is the end of chapter 14.